Here we go. Part 2. All right. Part 2, the breaking of glucose, glycolysis. All right, so we got this glucose molecule, C6H12O6. So glucose is 6 carbons. We want to take that 6 carbons and break it down into something called pyruvate, which is 3 carbons. It occurs in the cytoplasm. It produces NADH and ATP. This one sounds like NADPH. Remember, anytime you see these kind of molecules, all you have to remember is energy and electrons. That's it. You don't have to know what it stands for. In fact, heck, I don't even remember what it stands for, but it doesn't matter because I know it stands for energy and electrons. Energy molecules, see? And this animation doesn't work, so don't worry about that. Part 2, the Krebs cycle. Acetyl-CoA, which is an intermediate molecule, is formed from pyruvate. Remember, pyruvate is made from the 6 carbons to a 3-carbon molecule. 6 carbon was glucose, 3 carbon is pyruvate. You get 2 pyruvates because 3 plus 3 is, you got it, 6. It occurs in the matrix. Remember, we are in the mitochondria for these things. Release a small amount of energy, of ATP, 2 of them. It releases NADH, NADH2, and they're both used to power step 3. Remember, energy and electrons for those 2 things. As this is happening, carbon dioxide is given off as a waste product, which we can capture in class, which we'll do with a balloon and yeast to show that this is actually occurring. Okay, check this out. We've got pyruvate molecules that are here, all right? 2 molecules per glucose. Remember, pyruvate is a 3-carbon. Glucose is 6, so we can make 2 molecules of pyruvate from 1 molecule of glucose. These represent carbons, 1, 2, 3, okay? Carbon dioxide will lose 1 in that direction. Acetyl-CoA has 2 carbons, and it's going around the Krebs cycle. We lose 2 carbons here, NADH is created. Energy, remember, ATP, the exploded star, is energy. That's what's happening in this cycle. Okay, now to the electron transport chain. Electrons fall down the chain, and the goal of this step is to create maximum amount of energy. It produces a lot of energy, meaning 32 ATP. It's the whole goal. We're trying to make energy here. It occurs on the inner membrane of the mitochondria. Oxygen is necessary, hence aerobic respiration. Water is a waste product, so water is given off during this time. All right, check this out. This should look somewhat familiar to you. This is a cell membrane. Looking at the phospholipid heads and the tails, right? These are the proteins that carry things through the cell, either in or out of the cell. And this is what we're looking at here. Inner membrane space up here, the inner mitochondrial membrane, and the mitochondrial matrix. Remember, matrix is that liquid in there. So this is what's happening as you go through the stages in here. At the end here, we're getting some ATP. Now, to anaerobic respiration, there's 2 types of fermentation. One is called alcoholic fermentation, which is exactly what you think, used to produce alcohol. And 2 is called lactic acid fermentation. Milk products or dairy products use lactic acid fermentation, which is why if you are lactose intolerant, you take Lactaid to stop the lactose. Type 1, alcoholic fermentation, done by yeast and bacteria. Now, we're going to do or replicate this lab to actually see this is actually happening by yeast. First step is glycolysis, which we discussed already. Product of reaction is ethyl alcohol, and it's used to produce beer and wine. So this is a process that people use to produce beer and wine. Causes bread to rise in yeast. We're using yeast to have bread rise. Now, type 2 is lactic acid fermentation. It occurs in muscle cells during strenuous exercise. Okay, if you're working out a lot all the time and people say you get cramps because there's lactic acid buildup in your muscles. All right, so you want to get rid of the lactic acid in order to stop cramping. That's a theory. First step is glycolysis. It's a product of the reaction is lactic acid. It makes your muscles fatigue and feel sore. There's debate on that one too. Scientists aren't sure that what makes you feel sore, but we can talk about that when you get to anatomy. Used to make yogurts, cheeses, other products that have lactic acid in it, or lactose. All right, energy in our food. Energy is measured in calories. The word or the prefix calor means heat. So whenever we burn this off, we create energy. Remember, when bonds are broken, you get energy. So when these calories bonds are broken by our bodies, we get energy. So you can measure that output in calories. This food product has 90 calories per serving. This is the definition of a calorie. And when asked this to the public, over 90% of the public did not know what a calorie was. The most common answer, something in food. You need to be more educated than that. This is the definition. A calorie is the amount of energy needed to raise 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. That's the definition of a calorie. Why? Because when they figure out what's in food products, they burn the food product underneath a thing of water and see how much the temperature rises in that water. That's how you do it. Okay, here's a review of some stuff that we can go through. Remember, the exploded stars are always ATP. You'll see up here that NADH, FADH, and FADH2 all have electrons attached to it because they are electrons and energy molecules. This shaped thing here is the mitochondria. That's what it looks like. All right, electron transport chain is here, the Krebs cycle here, glycolysis, step 1, step 2, step 3. That's what this diagram is showing you. And then that's it, folks. We'll go over some of this stuff in class. See you soon.